So I've just taken my seat in first class on the train to Cologne with a stop in Bochum and Essen, which is where I'm headed. And so far, it's surprisingly empty. It's the first time I've gone to Essen this early. Usually I go there on Thursday, like most people. But now I'm 2 days early, which means there probably won't be any gamers on this train, unlike on the train back. It's, even though I had a whole day to myself to get things in order, I, of course, had to hurry and run and rush because I'm no good at time management. I expect this Spiel to be quite a lot of fun. I'll be interested in seeing people I've kind of interacted with online. I'm curious to meet some of our listeners. And right now that I think about it, when you listen to this and you are one of our listeners, then I will have met you. That's amazing. It's like time travel, but in reverse. So, regular travel. Alright, I think that's all I can say right now. I might give you an update while I'm on the train.
Please tell me I never have to be a baker. How people get up this time in the morning, I have absolutely no idea. But here I stand in Berlin Hauptbahnhof, ready to go to Spiel 17, and I wish that I had slept more.
Hello, and welcome to the Perfect Information Podcast.
A board game podcast of randomly dropped-in celebrities.
With him, Yorgos Panayotides.
And Patient Zero, Ben Maddox.
So I'm here with renowned board game celebrity.
Oh my, celebrity.
Isaac Childres, designer of Forge War, Gloomhaven, the upcoming founders of Gloomhaven, and anything else that I've missed?
That's all currently
Yeah, so I just want to talk to you about what's your experience of Essen been in the 2 years that you've been coming thus far? And how does it change, how does it differ from cons that you'd be used to going in America, for instance?
So my con experience is pretty limited. Like, I've done Gen Con for 2 years as well, but usually I just go to cons as a attendee, just like network with people, not really set up a booth and sell stuff, usually because I don't have anything to sell. I think it's actually the first con, like, overall that I've had my own game that I have available to sell. Last, Gen Con, like, couple months ago, like, I was hoping that Gloomhaven would be out by then, but it wasn't. And then, I guess the previous Gen Con, I was selling somebody else's game because I had a big booth and nothing to sell. Anyway, so what's the experience like? I feel like I'm, like, kind of the bottom, maybe, like, the far extreme on the side of just doing as little as possible. Right, so you see, like, everyone around us has, like, these fancy displays with lots of, artwork and everything. I've got, like, 2 banners that I carried with me, in my bag that I took from the US, and that's pretty much all the signage we have. I don't have, like, a palette that I bring in that has, like, a bunch of stuff that I have to set up. We've got the games coming in, but that's pretty much it. So I try to make it as stress-free as possible. Bring what we have and hope that it works out, which, I don't know, it's maybe more stressful in one way. But
And so why Essen? Because when I first came here sort of 3 or 4 years ago, there was almost no American presence here.
Oh, yeah.
And it's increased over the years, and it seems it's more important for American publishers now. Why is that? Why are you here as an American?
Right, why am I here? I don't know, it's just, I did it last year, just sort of as an experience. I was like, let's go to Essen and see what happens, sort of thing. And I don't know, I feel like for my games, sort of like heavier Euro games, like, it is more of a Euro audience. So I do feel like it's a good idea to have a presence here. Just to get my name out to a wider audience, right?
Are you a Eurogamer yourself?
Yeah.
Because I guess Essen's the mecca for sort of Eurogames, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's a mecca for a lot of things. You find, everything that you can imagine here. But yeah, it's the best place to go, to sort of tap into that European audience. You run Kickstarters and you get some, European audience there, like the people who are interested in Kickstarters, but that's like a very small percentage. So to be able to showcase your game to just a much wider audience, like if you can do it, I don't think there's a reason not to.
And what's the sort of European reception been for Cellofair games, for all the games you've done thus far?
Pretty good. In terms of I sell things on Kickstarter mostly,
right.
But even that, I feel like I'm getting a much larger percentage of European backers than most Kickstarters do. It's something like, I want to say, maybe 30 to 40% of my backers are from Europe. I feel like there's a lot of European interest in my games.
And so, for those people who haven't been to Essen, can't come to Essen for whatever reason, what would you say to them is unique, special, and attractive about coming here?
That's a good question. What is unique about Essen? I don't know. It's hard to say. Just the different audience. I don't know.
In terms of scale, how does it compare to Gen Con and places like that?
Right, yeah. The closest comparison is Gen Con, and it is somewhat similar. I feel like Gen Con is more tightly packed, I think it's all just in one big hall, whereas this is sort of spread out. So it's a little more open, a little more space, which is nice. It's a lot easier to get a bigger booth. It's impossible to get anything more than a 10-foot by 10-foot booth at Gen Con. Right. So it's nice to be able to just have more space and just to see different people. I don't know.
And so what are your expectations of the weekend?
So we've got 360 copies of Gloomhaven coming in, and
are they here yet?
No, that's what we're doing. We're waiting for them to arrive.
It's always this thing. I see publishers frantically running around on mobile phones.
Yeah, it's very stressful. It's are they going to arrive? We don't know. We hope that they arrive. But the expectation is we'll sell those ideally all tomorrow. We'd like to get more games, but it's just a matter of booth space. It's going to take up, because it's such a big game, it's going to take up
one copy is going to take up most of the booth.
Yeah. So that's what we are able to store here and, get from the factory in time. We'll sell out of those, and then we'll just be running demos the whole rest of the time, and really very little expectation on that, I guess. We'll hopefully be booked the whole time.
I have a question, and I'm sorry for completely steering it. It was a nice ending to the interview, but now I'm steering completely away again. Because I remember you wrote a very frank and very incisive blog post, or public post, about your experience with Kickstarter, about the challenges and the strengths and weaknesses of dealing with Kickstarter and backers. Has that in any way sort of sharpened your eye or changed your approach to coming to Essen and selling games here, or do you think they're completely separate?
Just in terms of dealing with customers on Kickstarter versus dealing with customers in real life, or
that's, but also the calculations, the financial calculations, the way of how you deal, which issues you sort of see on the horizon might be worth dealing with beforehand, stuff like that.
Whether there's any correlation. I don't know. It's very different, right? With Kickstarter, you're selling something online,
right,
and you just ship it to them directly, and you don't have to worry about anything. And whereas here, when you're dealing with a physical product, and it's a very different thing.
Right.
And I prefer to sell stuff online just because it's a lot easier in a lot of ways. You have to get the physical product here, which is what we're stressing about now, and then you have to exchange money, and it's all very physical and time consuming and stressful.
Is it a big shock to you that it's only cash here?
It's a little weird, but it's also nice, right? Because we don't really have any way. As Americans, we don't really have a way to take other forms of payment anyway. You know, like what I would do at Gen Con is, have like a credit card reader, but that, you know, it's different like here versus there. I wouldn't depend on that to work very well here. So I'm happy that it's all cash, because then I don't have to worry about anything else.
So one final question. I was listening to The Secret Cabal, and they were talking about you.
Okay.
And they basically implied that you were the world's most intelligent man. Is this true?
Well, he's wearing glasses, so I mean that's a point in his favor.
Indeed.
Yes, it's true. No, I don't know. I mean, the most intelligent, that's a tall order. I'm probably not the most anything, aside from maybe the biggest box, but I don't know. Anyway,
top 5 percentile?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel weird, like, tooting my own horn or being, like, arrogant or anything, but, like, I feel like I'm intelligent. I have a pretty high IQ, and I don't know. I mean, I'm good at board games.
I've never had my IQ tested because I'm scared to death of finding out the result.
I don't know, but yeah, I think anybody who plays board games is going to be pretty smart. I mean, you know, I think that's a good IQ test in itself, right? Can you like play Tolkien and do really well at it? That's a good IQ test, I think.
Then I'm going to go into the corner and have a little weep. Isaac Childres, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
So here we are in the exclusive press room full of all the press games.
It can't be that exclusive, let us in.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of stealing out all the games, just sweeping them into a bag.
Yeah, makes sense. No, solid plan.
So,
especially because it's empty and everyone can see us. Solid
firstly,
plan.
Talk about your initial impressions of the con so far.
It's the same impression as every year. It's getting more crowded.
Really, Thursday is crazy busy at the moment, right?
Yeah, I mean, and this is the empty day.
Yeah.
All the others are going to be worse, and it's horrible. Because I actually have to be here on Saturday, because I've heard a lot of people basically say, you know, you're not gonna commit to Saturday, it's just too much.
Yeah, right.
But I actually have an appointment on Saturday. I need to pick something up on Saturday, and I actually want to play 3 games, so I'll be here, and it'll be very much Japanese Subway.
So what have you played? Have you played anything new that's interesting?
Yes, I have. I've played Killing Code, Venice Vendetta yesterday.
How was that?
It's pretty good, actually. It's not great, but I'm quite happy of owning it. Kind of. In that it's kind of a mixture between Mr. Jack and Tragedy Looper. So
okay.
We're in between those two. It looks like a deduction game, but in fact it's an area control game.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes it very interesting. The deduction... I mean, I expect we're going to do a review at some point, and I'll go into detail, but I like the way that the deduction part is just the framework, both thematically and mechanically, for the actual game experience. And this is it's the first time I've seen it. It's very surprising. I really like that. I've also played Okanagan and Meeple Circus.
Okay.
Both by Matago. They're fine. They are fine. They're not bad, but they're not great either. One is basically an overcomplicated version of Carcassonne.
Right.
And Meeple Circus is great because of the last turn, which is funny, which is exciting, which is unusual. But the first 2 turns are not that interesting unless you have, very trembling hands.
I mean, I played Alone from
Right.
Horrible Games, which is a game's coming out next year. It's not for sale here.
All right.
But it's this dungeon crawler where they flip the switch, right? So it's 3 people playing against 1 hero.
Okay.
And, that sounds like a gimmick. And it certainly is a gimmick, and it's what draws people in. But actually, I found the game to be really slick, really efficient for a dungeon crawler. I mean, in terms of dungeon crawlers are famous for having little rules and exceptions and all this. Very, very simple, rules-wise. And just, really, it felt innovative and interesting. And I was looking at this game 2 years ago, and it felt as... I wasn't disappointed for waiting for 2 years for a game. Mm-hmm. It actually came across as really, really enjoyable, and I think when it comes out, it's going to be really interesting. It didn't go gangbusters on Kickstarter.
All right.
But you should go out there and have a look at it. It's mechanically very slick, very tight, and does exactly what it wants to do. So I'd highly recommend it.
All right. Yeah, well, some games, do need a second run on Kickstarter. Like, get some buzz going, and then the second run, break the 1 million barrier.
So what do you reckon? What are you looking forward to for the rest?
I still have a bunch of games to play. I want to try out and maybe pick up as well. I'm looking at Star Cartel right now by Osprey Games. So I see if I can give that game a go. There's still a number of games I want to play at the Taiwanese booth. I want to try Alexandria. I want to try Kitchen Rush. There are a bunch of games that seem interesting, and since there are not that many on the list, I do kind of expect to get them played before I leave. But I'm not looking forward to fighting all the crowds. This is actually very empty and very quiet in here.
Which is great. Whereas I get an illicit thrill from touching other people.
Okay. But you're coming down with a cold, aren't you? Oh, you're patient zero. You're part of a Pandemic Season 2 promo team.
Kiss me, Georgia. So here I am in the Creativity Hub booth, and I'm with the estimable, nay fragrant, Michael Fox.
Hello.
And he's putting on a posh English accent.
I just have a standard BBC Radio 4 accent.
Is that your Brexit voice?
It isn't. My Brexit voice is probably a lot angrier.
Oh, get him out of the country.
Oh God, don't like them here. Those bloody Irish foreigners, which is me. Yeah, that's weird.
Are you an Irish person?
I am an Irish, yes.
Because you don't sound like an Irish.
No, I had that beaten out of me at school. So that's how that works. But no, yeah, we're at Essen, and you're here,
Yeah,
and I am here.
I am. And the reason I'm here, I mean, we get together anyway, because you're a lovely lad.
It's true.
And, you know,
Handsome chap.
I'm sexy. But
true.
we're here to talk about business. We're here to talk about things.
The business of games.
So I'm going to say a statement now, which I think is right, and correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first time Rory Stories cubes have gone into sort of big box games that incorporate the cubes as not just their own thing, right?
Pretty much so, yeah. So obviously, the Creativity Hub has been well known as a brand for Rory Story cubes for years, decades even, since the first set came out in the early 60s.
Indeed.
Or rather, the early mid-2000s.
I mean, that Jimi Hendrix gig where he was playing with Rory Story.
That was great, where he made that song up on the spot using the original and the Voyager set. It was beautiful. So, this is the first time that, yes, we're now branching into more tabletop games. Obviously, earlier this year, the Rory Story Cubes brand was handed over, beautifully packaged, to the lovely folks at Asmodee.
Right.
So they now are, they're the people who control the whole thing.
So this is like a studio under the Asmodee umbrella.
We are fiercely and gloriously independent.
Okay.
So, but of course, it's nice having those links to people like Asmodee, because they can give us hints, they can give us support if we need to, if we have questions, we can ask them about cool things and say, hey, how does this potentially work? But also over the last, 8 months to a year, I've been on board since I think March of this year, and the company has just sort of bloomed and blossomed into this beautiful studio making incredible games that are filled with heart and filled with passion, and it just so happens that one of them is powered by Rory Story Cubes.
Because I know this has been a thing that's been in the works for a while, because I'm not going to mention names, but a friend of mine, last winter, was designing a game, was pitching a game here. The premise was you use the story cubes in the game, and so how long have these games been in development?
Untold's been in development for over 2 years. So it's been around for a very long time in various shapes and forms. It's a co-design between Rory himself, the Rory O'Connor of the Story Cubes, and a guy over in the States called John Fiore, who is a lovely and wonderful chap, but his main focus is RPG design and RPG development. He loved Story Cubes. He came up with this rather simplified and streamlined role-playing game system called the 9 Cubes. And he then said, hey, Rory, you're a human being who likes games and also does story cubes. Would you like to check it out? And from there, they sort of partnered up, and they developed what we now have today as Untold.
So what's your role in all of this?
I do so much. I'm so tired. But
you look gorgeous.
I do.
it's all of the drugs, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, heroin chic is a thing.
If I was, I'd be an awful lot thinner. No, I would. I do a fair few things at Creativity Hub. Number one, I handle the media stuff, so social media, speaking to lovely reviewers like yourself, organising things, making.
I consider
sure
myself a Renaissance man rather than a reviewer, but
it'll work. A Renaissance reviewer, a review sauce.
I mean, I'm not so reductive personally.
That is true. What else do I do? I do all of the videos that go up on the YouTube channel, of course. I do the how to play stuff, so that's really quite nice. But I do in-house game design and development. So I helped out on Untold, for example, by refining the rules, rewriting the rules, making sure that they are as clear and as understandable as possible. And I think that's why it's quite useful having me on board for that section of the development, because then when I'm making the how to play video, I can essentially tell the same story, just one is written and one is visual.
Right.
So on top of that, I'm also doing in-house game design and development. So we're working on a few titles at the moment that will hopefully be released next year.
Will you have your name emblazoned on a box?
I sincerely hope so. I'm getting a nod from Anita, one of the co-founders of Creativity Hub. I want it in, let's see, 12-inch box. I want it each
Comic Sans?
Comic Sans.
Neon print.
And Comic Sans.
The graphic designer is in the background choking on her coke.
Winnie is she's just going, no Comic Sans, no papyrus. Impact? Oh, she's wincing now. I think we maybe actually given her pain.
I literally know Times New Roman and Comic Sans, the only fonts I know.
Papyrus is the worst.
Okay.
Papyrus is terrible. It's the new Comic Sans. But yeah, so I'm going to be doing that. So on top of that, there's also making the tea, it's a company where everybody pitches in an awful lot. So everybody comes to the company with their own set of unique skills. Apparently mine is jabbering away, talking about games and making games better.
Utterly indispensable, especially the jabbering away.
The jabbering away can be useful. But we all bring our own thing. So, we have incredibly talented artists. We have amazing graphic design. We have even the folks who who run the office. They are the very, very best that they can be. And we've all come together and coalesce to make this beautiful thing that doesn't feel... Okay, so I've worked for a few games companies over the years, and this feels unlike any other games company I've worked for. And it's almost cliche and trite to say it, but it's a very sort of familial vibe to the Creativity Hub. We all believe in the things we're doing, and we're not just making games for the sake of making games. We're making games that have heart, games that... I keep on saying games that tell stories, but it's kind of incorrect. It's games that their stories will unveil themselves as you play. And it's even something like Blank, for example, the other game we're releasing here at Essen. Initially, your first play, you'll just feel like, oh, right, so it's a simple card game where you're getting rid of the cards from your hand. But if you look into why we made it, the idea behind it is it's essentially a game about game design. It allows you to sort of take on the mantle of a game designer and then just go wild on this small set of rules and then just entirely make it yours. Turn it into whatever kind of game you want it to be. And we're just here to sort of not move away from the story cubes, because obviously we still have story cubes here. We have our licensed ones. We have our brand new Adventure Time set that's releasing here as well. But we are going to be looking to the future to be making literally any kind of game. A game that has importance, a game that has heart, a game that has soul, a game that people will sit down and they'll play it and go, all right, this is a bit different. This is cool. This is out of the ordinary. I mean, they still have to be amazing and great games.
Yes.
That's the most important part. We want everything that goes out the door to be the very best that it can be. But they also need to have a reason behind why we made them.
And so, why Essen then? Why is Essen... Because what we're doing on this show is basically, we want to speak to people who have all types of experience with Essen. The veterans, down to, I mean, although obviously Rory Story Cubes have been around for ages, this is like your first time presenting.
It's our re-debut.
Yeah, exactly. And why Essen? Why is that important? What challenges have you found?
So, I mean, Essen is very much... It's the most important show of the year. And this isn't being dismissive to stuff like Gen Con, to stuff like Origins. If you want to make an impact, you kind of have to be here. You kind of have to be at Essen. Creativity Hub has been at Essen for the last few years. They've always had like a beautiful stand filled with story cubes. And people will come and people will go, oh, they'll come and pick up the new sets, and that is great. But we want to show them now that we're evolving as a company. And we're moving into new stuff. We're moving into making exciting new games that we are really, really passionate about. But yeah, you kind of have to be here. It's the big show. There's like over 1,000 games released like brand new releases this year. And we are 2 of them. And sure, we're not...
Is that exciting?
Yeah,
or is that
it is.
intimidating?
Do you know what? It's actually a little bit of both. It's very much a double-edged coin. Because you have no idea if people are going to be accepting of the stuff that you're putting out. Obviously, we sent out review copies to people all around the world of Untold and Blank, and some people utterly loved them. Some people were like going, all right, this isn't entirely for me. But whenever we do review copies for folks, when we want people to check out the games, we always want them to be one thing, and that is brutally honest. We want them to tell us what they really, really liked, and in all honesty, what they didn't like is as important, and you're going to get that same reaction here. This is the first time that the general gaming public is going to see Untold, the first time they're going to see Blank, and it's going to tell us an awful lot. Like, are the games that we're making now, are they going to work for this audience? I mean, Essen is a very different show to something like Gen Con. Gen Con is, and this isn't being dismissive, it's a very nerdy show. It has the hardcore gamers who go there.
Yeah.
Essen has, obviously an awful lot of hardcore gamers, but it also has an awful lot of family gamers, especially as the weekend pops.
What I always find astonishing every time I'm here is how, and I don't want to say, again, I don't want to be dismissive, but just how many normal folks are here with their families.
Nothing wrong with calling them normal folks, because they are, for Germany, they are normal gamers.
Well, gaming is so much more ingrained within the culture here than it is. So I have a local Boots chemist place, where you buy a deodorant and your toothpaste, and there's a games section in the chemist, because that's just German culture. And so it really is, I've never been to Gen Con, but when I see footage of Gen Con, it seems huge but very niche, and whereas this seems much more about the general population. Yeah,
and I mean, it's great to get both sides of the gaming public here. It's great to have the really hardcore folks who, sure, both of our games might not necessarily be for them, but that's entirely okay. I still want them to come and sit down to try them and see what they think of them. And then the feedback that we get from these 2 releases are going to help us mould our future releases. The themes that we want to come up with, the stories that we want to tell with those games are going to be they're going to be built on the foundations of the things that we do with Untold and Blank. And I find that really, really exciting. And again, like you said, it's also incredibly intimidating, because we are known. We are literally worldwide famous for Rory Story Cubes, and it's a brand that we don't own anymore. It's a brand that is now in the hands of Asmodee. We are still, people still refer to us as, it's not the Creativity Hub. It's Rory Story Cubes.
Right.
And that's cool, because we have built up a beautiful and strong reputation on that.
And so what's the deal then? Asmodee licensed the Story Cubes. Was that part of the deal when you took over, that you would be able to use them within products that you
It was
produce?
also, so when Asmodee took the rights to Story Cubes, it was definitely part of the deal that we would be able to use them in Untold. I mean, it says right on the front of the box, it's powered by Rory Story Cubes.
Yeah.
It's part of the deal. But we have a great relationship with them. Like it's really, really good. This is a company that are... If you were to look on BGG, you would see the amount of people talking about Asmodee. It's generally like they are massive steamrollers and they are just trying to take over the gaming world.
I mean, do you think it's beneficial? Because, I'm an outsider.
Yeah.
I mean, fundamentally, I'm an amateur and I don't work in business. And from the outside, I have a concern about consolidation. I mean, I've seen the prices of games increase under the Asmodee banner. I mean, you working directly with them, I mean, do you have concerns about this, or...?
It's a little weird. I mean, I have, as a games consumer, obviously, I see that they are trying to... It's almost like a centralization.
Yeah.
However, even though like there is this all-encompassing Asmodee brand, each one of the unique and individual Asmodee companies is still its own individual entity. So while they all sort of report to the umbrella corporation, this isn't Resident Evil, but you know what I mean, they're all independent. So, you know, you have Asmodee North America, you have Asmodee France, you have... coming up at the end, in the start of the new year, as Devium are turning into Asmodee UK, of course. But they're all still independent entities, and they all still can make their own decisions, their own calls. So it's not just this giant, world-consuming blob of a company.
My big concern is because they have the main company above them.
Yeah.
Eurazo, I think. Eurazeo, whatever they're called. I mean, and they seem to be fairly benevolent at the moment. They seem to be sort of benevolent dictators.
Yeah. Okay.
For want of a better phrase.
Yeah.
I mean, my concern just as a consumer is that Eurazeo see a good time to sell, and, you know, you have... I'm trying to think of a historical reference here. You have the good King Richard I replaced by King John.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be my concern.
Yeah, I mean, I think they see that gaming is growing, and gaming it's continuing to grow. We see like exponential growth year on year, and have done over the last like... I remember when I came to my first Essen, which I think was like 2008, and it was a big show. Like so many people, 500 games released. Yeah. And every year we come back and we see that it's bigger and bigger, and more games companies and more releases. I mean, there's the current BGG list as of right now. There's like 1,034 new releases at the show. And I think Asmodee's parent company, they see that there is still growth. Obviously, you know, we can't tell what's going to happen in 5 years' time, what's going to happen in 10 years' time. But I think for the near future, you know, for the next couple of years at least, I don't think we're going to see them go, all right, gaming's dead, we're out, we're cashing in our chips, and that's it. If you go over into like the hall, which Asmodee has like essentially taken over, it looks incredible. Yeah. You know, they are throwing money at this. You get on the U-Bahn, you go to the stations, and they have the digital advertising boards, and they're advertising Pandemic Legacy, they're advertising Dice Forge.
I mean, sort of part of me really loves it.
Yeah.
The professionalization, the fact that you know, the fact that there's a real sort of professional attitude.
A push for professionalization, which this industry sorely needs.
For sure. Also, though, there is a part of me that quite liked the ad hoc, in your garage, producing games aspect.
You are not going to lose that. You are not going to lose that at all.
I mean, I bought a copy of QE today from Cubico Games. And this is the guy who makes wooden games in his shed.
Yeah, and they are... gloriously weird and strange and beautiful. I mean, he did, was it Jam Sumo a couple of years ago? And you are always going to have indie creators. I mean, hell, basically, we are an indie creator.
Yeah.
This is, I'm not going to be an arse about it, but we are punk rock game designing.
Well, and this is the beauty. I mean, even for people like us, we can make something that is seemingly professional in our bedrooms.
Yeah.
And with the opening up of printing houses, Panda Games, that sort of thing, you can make games that are not only great, but look like they're proper games.
Yeah, and you know, we are... I say that we are sort of like, you know, we are a punk rock design house, because we are. You know, we come together, and it's the old punk rock adage of, you know, here's an A chord, here's a B chord, here's a D chord.
Yeah.
Go write a song. And basically that's what we did. We took our ideas, we threw them all together, and we made two... frankly, great games that I am willing to just go, do you know what? Everybody should play these damn things. Do you want to pause while they're talking? All right.
Just shout.
So, from that, there are so many other companies out there who are doing that. But we are so lucky that we have an amazing team who come together to make it not only a great game to play, but make it look like stunning. Like Untold, I think, honest to God, is one of the best looking games at this show. And that is testament to the amount of work that was put into it. Blank, it's a simple looking game, but we put hours, days, weeks of development into that game, months of development into that game, to consider things like, you know, we needed to make it colorblind accessible to folks, and the amount of like back and forth testing that we did. It's not hard to make a game. It's very, very hard to make a great game.
For sure.
But we have done that, and there are so many companies here who are doing that, and I'm really, really excited. So yeah, while you do have like the corporate overlord behemoth that is Asmodee, there are so many indie folks still out there. I mean, you've got Stonemaier Games, Jamie Stegmaier, who is knocking it out of the park with games like Scythe, Charterstone. Again, beautiful games.
You would assume that these are games made by a 60, 70 strong man company.
So I think we get that from the fact that when we were kids, the games that we played were generally pretty janky. They weren't great.
Right.
But they were normally put together by small teams. You know, small teams at MB, small teams at Hasbro, Action GT. And then, you know, we grow up and we start playing video games, and we think, you know, a high-quality video game, like a AAA title, is going to have hundreds of people's input into it. But we can make a game which has... Our team is 9 strong. Like, we have 9 people who sit in our desks at our office every day, Monday to Friday, and we can make something that is as good as one of those massive companies. It's amazing. We are so lucky at this point in time that we can just all come together and just... It doesn't matter whether you're just like a one person... Essentially, okay. So you know the Japanese concept of doujinshi, like independent creation.
I don't. I said then I realised I was lying. So no, I don't.
Super speedy rundown on it. It's like, you know, people who make things that they love, essentially in their own bedrooms or in their own living rooms, and sell them. The Japon brand games, for example, are a perfect example. Go back 6-7 years ago to what Japon brand were doing. And those games were, again, I'm going to use it as a descriptor, they were janky. They looked dodgy, they were sort of like weird cardboard, it'd been hand cut, and they were still some great games there. Like, still amazingly great games there, still games that I play. But now you look at the Japan brand releases for 2017, and they have things like Perfect Hotel, which looks... gorgeous. I mean, it's stunning.
They Sakura Hunt.
Again, a beautiful game. Lagerstätten, very understated, but very stylistic looking.
I mean, what excites me about the Japanese games is how they're putting sort of standard European game mechanics and shooting it through the prism of their culture. So you have these games, Unicornus Knights,
yes, of course,
for instance, you know, really, really interesting, and that's really the explosion of the hobby is so exciting because all the cultural influences are now coming into the... It's not the hegemony of America and Germany. You're now having people's takes on all of those sort of classic ideas, and it's very, very exciting.
That's it. For years and years, it was like, you know, the eternal battle, you know, the Autobots versus Decepticons, Eurotrash versus, you know, Eurogames versus Ameritrash. And now we see the explosion from the East. You see games from Korea, from Taiwan, like Taiwan board games. They are making so many cool things. The only stuff I pre-ordered was from Taiwan board games because it was just so, all right, I need to get this. I need copies of this. And another thing that we're bringing it back to Creativity Hub, because, of course, I'm going to shamelessly plug as much as we can. One thing we're doing, we're working with a group in Uganda called Game Changers.
We did a collection. We sent them a load of games out.
So we're now working with them to talk about game design and development to see what kind of ideas they can come up with.
I mean, that would be amazing.
So, you know, we are going to have, over the next couple of years, an explosion of more games coming from Japan, from Korea, from Taiwan, from China. I want to see what kind of games we're going to be getting from Africa. What kind of games are we going to be getting from India?
Right.
If we put a whole bunch of cubes and meeples in front of somebody, what kind of thing, and as you say, when they see it through their prism, what will they be coming up with? And I think that is where the sort of the indie excitement.
I mean, I think board games are really on the sort of verge of exploding as a worldwide art form, if you want to use that terrible phrase.
No, do you know what?
But
we refer to the stuff that we make as art.
Right.
And there's no problem with referring to it as art, because it is. It is.
It generates an experience and it reflects who we are as people as much as cinema, novels, music does.
Yeah.
Right?
And rather than it being like a passive sitting there experience, it's an active experience that you take on and you become part of it. And because everybody is unique, their experience is going to be unique, driven from that. And that is a beautiful thing. Only what we do, like every single company in this hall and in the other halls that are throughout Essen, this is a unique experience. And there are 1,000 brand new experiences here this weekend. And how can, we go back to, I want to go back to what you said earlier about, why Essen. You can't miss this. It's the biggest show of the year. And there is literally anything for everybody.
And it feels like you're on the cutting edge of something that's about to become huge, and that's very exciting.
Yeah, and I know there are going to be people out there who will go, oh, well, games were better before they went mainstream. Do you know what? They weren't.
Absolutely not.
They really weren't. It would, I found it so difficult, 10 years ago, trying to find a group of people who would come and meet up regularly to play games. Now, there's a bar every Wednesday, a bar every Monday that we can go to, like this locally. We have 4 or 5 different game groups who are meeting up in like libraries, in universities, and this is just like in a 2-mile radius from our office. It's crazy. We've got game cafes opening left, right and centre. And the more people we get to see these kind of games, whether it's Untold and Blank, whether it's things from like Planetarium, Farlight from Game Story, whether it's Terraforming Mars, whatever. Here in Germany,
by the way, he was just reading the signs of the booths around
just
him.
all around.
That sounded like an incredible recall of knowledge. It wasn't. He was just reading.
Reading is a skill, then.
This is true.
Skill and a talent.
This is true.
But you walk into a supermarket here in Germany, and they have games like Camelot.
Right.
They have games like Carcassonne on their supermarket shelves. We go into the supermarket in the UK, and yes, they have games, but they're not really the kind of games that...
I only go to the cheap white cider section.
It's probably the best
the
place.
only section.
It's the only way you can get through the day, really.
Exactly.
But you go to somewhere like Walmart or Target in the States, and they're taking a chance. Yeah. They're taking these games on. Like Fog of Love, for example,
right.
by Hush Hush Projects.
It's now Walmart exclusive.
It's in Walmart!
Crazy.
Like, the biggest retailer in America is taking a pot shot on a 2-player game about romantic comedies that is as Euro as anything.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like, holy crap! 10 years ago? 5 years? 2 years ago? Who'd have thought it? And, a lot of it comes down to the fact that Target took a chance on Cards Against Humanity.
Right.
And people decry Cards Against Humanity an awful lot, it's dirty humour, and you play it a couple of times, and that's
I'm not going to lie to you, I love all the fuck words. They're great.
Well, of course, you do love to say the word.
I do.
No, I'm not going to say that word. But
you can say whatever you want, it's fine.
But that opened the door to so many other things.
Yeah.
And it's really, really exciting to see people just... It's not bandwagoning, that's the wrong word for it, but it's people who see that there's an opportunity. And do you know what? I can put together a quality game, I can make an amazing product, and I could be the next game that's in Walmart.
Right.
We're talking with people in the States, we're talking with people worldwide about getting our games into their channels.
That sounds painful.
It does sound painful. Especially Untold, that's a big box.
Yeah.
Blank is probably a little easier to fit. But we have so many different options out there now than we did even a few years ago. Like, different retail options. Anybody can make a game, anybody can put it on Amazon. Fantastic. Then you start building up the buzz, and hopefully you'll start getting more and more and more, and then you hopefully have someone like Barnes & Noble come knocking on your door, or Walmart, or Target. And that's exciting, because that opens... Even if 1,000 people buy a copy of Fog of Love from Walmart, that's 1,000 people who may never have taken a chance on these kind of games.
Absolutely.
And this is no longer this is my hobby and nobody else can play kind of game. This is everybody can play. And as we see, we're going to be seeing more shows in the UK. Like UK Games Expo, of course, is well established now. We're getting Tabletop Magazine. They're doing a show in September of 2018. Aircon. That's growing beautifully. They only started a couple of years ago. They're planning on like over 1,000 people attending their show next year. Tabletop Scotland is another thing that's kicking off. And as we get more of these shows, people are going to start taking a chance on, maybe I'll pop down for the day and see what sort of things are happening. They might be aware, I played Risk when I was a kid. I dabbled in D&D when I was younger, that kind of stuff. And they'll see that things like, Untold, well, it's a storytelling game. It's a storytelling game like D&D is a storytelling game. Yeah. And it's exciting. More people playing more stuff. And I don't think this bubble's going to burst. Not for a long, long time.
Well, I'm not going to allow you to take up the entire podcast, so I'm just going to say thank you, Michael, for giving over your time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed.
And, let's experience the rainbow.
All right, I'm standing here at the booth of Gamdow Games in prestigious Hall 7, as I like to call it, the best of all halls. The designers...
The designer's not here.
Oh, the designer's not here. But I'm speaking with the publisher of my most anticipated game this year in Essen, Killing Code, Venice Vendetta. So, my first question is to you. This is not your first time in Essen. This is your second time at Essen. How have things changed since you've last been here as a publisher?
Well, we have been publishers like over 10 years, but we were staying in China, and then from last year we came here from small booth. Now we got a bigger booth here this year, and we brought 2 games here, and one of it is the Killing Code. So I can see there's a lot of contention that I already attend to. So it's a very interesting game, and we are looking forward to promote the game in this show, this fascinating show here. Yeah.
Excellent. Sorry. That's excellent. So I remember reading through the rulebook and chuckling a lot. Do you see yourself sort of promoting a certain kind of experience in the board games that you publish?
Well, actually, we are very fancy the storyline of every board game. We love the stories that we can enjoy in board games. Yeah, that's why we always choose, because we always also publish Chinese edition games in China. So we always find board games that with a story.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our venue of the publishing. And we want to make board games with stories as well. Yeah.
So the 2 games, the other game is Voyager's Venture. I have to admit, I haven't heard much about it. So can you give me like a quick précis what it's about?
Yeah, well, actually, this game is refined from the game last year named Private Theory. So we want to drop out the theme and want to create another story. Mm-hmm. So this story is about Columbus. So the Columbus won the sponsorship from the royalty of Spain. Mm-hmm. So he will have a lot of competitors during the days, and then they combat each other, use a lot of strategy, use a lot of plans. Then they compose a plan to show to the Queen Isabella. So eventually Isabella will make a decision that who will have the quality, will have the best plan to go to find the new Indies.
All right, okay. Yeah. Excellent. So I see you're pretty much set up here.
Yeah.
You have how many? 4, 5 tables? 5 gaming tables?
We haven't got all the tables yet.
Yes,
right. They make a mistake, so we're still waiting for the furniture, and we have the flag over there.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, we are still waiting for it, but yeah, it's kind of exciting.
All right. Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I hope you're going to have a great 4 days coming up ahead. And I'm looking forward to running into you again next year with even more interesting games.
Yeah, sure. You will be. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hallo, this is Essen. Willkommen in den Guild.
Okay, so this is going to be slightly different. Usually there is a fierce exchange of ideas and a back and forth repartee that you're so used to. And I don't want to let you in on the nightmare that is being me. But I basically spent the entire of Essen, as you can hear by my voice, being sick as a fucking dog, so I've done nothing. So this is going to be more like interviewing someone rather than actually being a back and forth of ideas. So Georgios.
Yes.
Gives you impressions.
It's crowded, as everyone keeps saying. Interestingly enough, though, even though everyone expected the weekend, Sunday and Saturday, to be the worst days, that wasn't actually the case. Thursday and Friday, I feel, were the ones that were most crowded. And apparently, everyone stayed away on the weekend for some reason. So who knows what next year is going to look like. I finally got around to playing a bunch of games, which is usually a bit of an issue when you come here in some form of podcast capacity. And I'm going to give you a quick rundown because I want to. So, first night I played Killing Code Venice Vendetta, my number one most anticipated game. And while I don't think it's the best game I've played, I was quite taken with it. It's quite clever. It's a mixture between somewhere between Mr. Jack and Tragedy Looper.
I mean, is it one of those games that, conceptually looks really great, and then it ends up being a bit undercooked because...
it's only undercooked in the sense that I think the production is a bit sloppy. And then it's in the sense that the box is far too big. The components could have used a little refinement, but other than that, it works. It's a solid game. I think the cleverest thing about it is that it suggests that it's a deduction game, but in fact, the deduction element is more of a game clock, in addition to the 5 turns you play. So it's really quite interesting. You're racing to the finish, one player trying to keep you from singling out the one character that he's secretly playing, and then you're just moving your characters around, trying to tactically place them in such a way as to trigger effects. And that's actually kind of fun, and it works very well as a semi-co-op game.
Yeah, well, I played a game that, production-wise, was absolutely A1.
Right.
And felt like a graphic designer had got hold of a prototype and made this beautiful version of a prototype. And they hadn't really worked out the mechanics, and that was Lagerstätten, which is...
All right.
One of these Japanese games. It's beautiful. You're collecting dinosaurs and you're sort of competing academically to put your stamp on these dinosaurs. And it literally is a worker placement game.
Right.
That does not change the setup of the board for any player count.
Okay.
So we played a 3-player game. And there's a certain sort of mechanic where you sort of dig down through cards.
Right.
Well, it's kind of impossible to do, because you just don't have enough players and they don't limit the board.
Oh, okay.
And
that's odd.
Then you're doing set collection. Some sets have 4, some sets have 2. There's no difference in the points awarded for a 4-point set or a 2-point set. So there's literally no reason to collect a 4-point set, because why would you?
Or maybe it's the other way around. You're supposed to collect a 2-point set, and if you're stuck with a 4-point set, you have to just bite your way through it.
Well, and it just felt... I mean, it really felt like there were some nice ideas.
Right.
Thematically integrated mechanics that could have done with 12 months more development, and then it would have been interesting. But yeah, it was... slightly disappointing.
Speaking of thematically integrated mechanics, I had a go at Kitchen Rush by Artipia Games.
Okay.
And I'm going to let you in on a secret. This might be the game they put out that I enjoyed the most. It's at its core, it's just one mechanic. That you have your workers are sand timers, and you can only reuse a worker when the sand has run through.
Yeah. Did you manage to play A Tale of Pirates?
No, not yet.
Oh, because I wondered how the two compare.
I think it's the other way around. Where there you basically place your worker, and you can only trigger the action when the sand timers run.
Okay.
It's surprisingly enough, it does change the dynamic a bit, I think. Anyway, the Kitchen Rush is also thematically well integrated. We sort of split up the jobs. We have a 4-minute time limit per turn, 4 turns in total. And you're splitting up your jobs. You have one guy washing the dishes, you have one guy getting in the gas, you have another guy buying supplies, and you have more... however people you can manage, just cooking the actual food. It's all set in a restaurant, and it's surprisingly difficult and hectic, but in a very, very fun and entertaining way. So you'll definitely hear more about this in one of our later shows.
And so, yeah, I played one of my top games was Voodoo Prince. And it's the Rainer Knizia trick taker, little box Schmidt-Spieler card game. And, I mean, apart from I played with a guy who hates games, and literally 2 hands in...
I know what you mean.
2 hands in, he was like, oh, this is dreadful. And it's just not true. It's a really interesting trick-taking game.
It's a Chemnitz game, so basically every Chemnitz game has some clever mechanic in it. Or is it more of a Reiner game?
Well, exactly, it's a Reiner game.
Oh, excellent.
Now, it's one of those games where you... Generally, you're just trying to aim to be the penultimate person. In rounds you get out when you win a certain number of tricks. You're planning to be the penultimate person. It's a very simple rule that is leveraged in a very interesting way.
All right.
Like most Runner Knizia games, right?
Definitely, yeah. So basically, Knizia is always quite interesting that he does these small tweaks. I think he might have been the first one to be really clever about making small tweaks to establish mechanics, like he does in Ingenious, I believe, and probably some other game where you score with your lowest scoring attribute as opposed to the highest scoring one. So it sort of forces you to focus on everything at once and pay attention to who you're trying to beat and how.
Yeah, and this is what exactly he does here. He takes a trick-taking game and he just leverages how you score, and that denotes your strategy. Really interesting, really fun. It's super cheap. I'd recommend it. So what's next?
Actually, one game that I wanted to that I would have bought if the production had been a bit different was Medical Frontiers by the Taiwanese booth. I'm not quite sure which the actual publisher was called. It's a game where you're focused on researching new medicine for some sort of disease. There's a bidding system in it, there's a point-based system, and it's quite clever. The smartest thing about the game is the turn order, and that it's randomized, but it stays the same throughout the game, so you can sort of see, all right, I'm going to get one turn now, then that other player, then it's me again, and then the other player gets 2 turns, and then the third player gets 3 turns in a row. It's kind of like this, which allows you to sort of plot out your strategy in some way, and it's appealing, it's clever, but the production makes it bigger than it needs to be, and that pushes up the price unnecessarily.
Well, there seems to be a trend, right? That... And it seems to me that it's a trend that comes from America. It's all about shelf presence, it's all about size, and so you have these little games in these huge boxes, or these unnecessary productions.
Right.
And it's pushing up prices because people...
They're more likely to sort of pick up a game that looks big. They're more willing to shell out money if they can see, right, I'm getting a big box for it. And once they open it, it's mostly air.
Which is not something that's infected the German market, which is really interesting. Little German card games come in little German card game boxes.
That is true.
Not huge boxes that, in our current climate, is incredibly wasteful. And it is sort of destined to put me off a game. So, what's your biggest disappointment thus far? And then we'll get back onto more positives.
My biggest disappointment was probably... Well, the one game I played just now, which was Palace of Mad King Ludwig, which is far more... Well, fiddly is an artwork, but it's far too small for... And just far too much you have to pay attention to. And then it's not just, tactically and strategically, it's more like these are small details printed on these small tokens, and you need to keep them in mind. You need to sort of plot out the strategy, which you can't really do because other people are going to change things around so rapidly that it's basically a very tactical game. And it's not even cutthroat, it's just very frustrating because people keep blocking you off in a way that you can't do anything against.
I found with Castles that it's just fiddly enough. And I thought you add anything to that game, and then it becomes unwieldy and annoying, and I guess that's what Palaces has done, right?
Pretty much, yeah. By not letting you build your own little palace, but focusing on one, you're always stepping on each other's toes, and you're kind of seduced into playing negatively and aggressively, because otherwise somebody's just going to run away with the points. It's the only way of interaction you have. It's a disappointment.
No, I found, for me, my biggest disappointment is not a game I've played, and I don't want to sound like a scrimping, moaning, poor bastard, but I thought...
Who's sick?
But I thought €39 for the Oink Games version of Modern Art
was a bit rough.
Is egregious. It was absolutely egregious. It's a tiny box. It's €39, and for a 15-year-old game. And I played Startups last night too. And really, I'm beginning to wonder whether there's
Steve Release.
Ooh, Steve Release.
He's in Essen as well.
I didn't know they were coming here.
Well,
are you playing a gig or something?
No, I'm not. Let's move on to another topic then.
Anyway, all right. Anyway, so I I really am beginning to wonder whether there's much more to Oink Games' shtick than nice graphic design. I've not played any one of their games that I thought was super duper.
Right.
And
I think I really like Oink Games. I think one of my games...
But why? Why do you like them?
Because they are small, they are pretty to look at as objects that you buy, that you own. They give me a kind of aesthetic pleasure that other games simply do not. And I found the 2 games I own of them, or 3 games that I own of them, are very clever and very, very appealing and fun. One of them is In a Grove. The other one is Kayawagana. I don't remember.
That was great.
Yeah,
I apologise to our Japanese listeners.
Both of them, yeah. And of course, Insider, which is still in the running for me for Game of the Year.
Right.
Because I only discovered it this year. I think they're great. I do agree with you that just because the size of the box is the same as 2 Oink Games, you can't have the same price as 2 Oink Games. It just doesn't work. And I came in kind of set on buying a copy, and then I backed away because I thought I'm willing to sort of support you guys with the small games for 20 euros. It's fine, I like them. But you know, if you're just forcing me to buy a game at double the price just because it's double the box size, then I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, I've played a few games from them, not Insider, interestingly.
Right.
And they have struck me as games without a lot of substance.
Oh,
literally no replayability, and they're beautiful. They're lovely little artifacts.
We should sit down and play a few then.
That I'm very little interest in. Anyway, moving on, Georgie.
Right. Speaking of Japanese games, interesting enough, I think it's a game set in Japan, but actually but it's we're just getting weird finger gestures from people. It's amazing.
Say hello. Say hello to the people.
Hello to the people.
Say hello to yourself.
Hello, people who don't like background noises. Sorry.
You'll love the background noise in this. You're the background noise.
Hello to the people. Finally, a podcast for the people. Right, a game that I believe is a Chinese publisher, but it's set in Japan. It's called Hida Furukawa, and this is kind of the diametrical opposite of the Oink Games. Okay. It's a very small game. It's quite clever. The production values just aren't there. The money tokens are really, really cheap plastic. But the cards are nice to look at, but not overwhelmingly so. It's a simple blind bidding game. It works surprisingly well. It's cheap. A friend of mine actually picked this up, and I was tempted to do the same, but a quick look behind the scenes, my luggage is freaking exploding because I have too many boxes with me. It's amazing. Right, so that was a pretty good game. I'll see if I can either get a copy of my own once I'm back home, or maybe I just ask or the guy who actually picked up a copy just come around more often.
And so, how have you found Essen this year? You're my eyes and ears, as I spent a large part of Essen on my back. And not in a good way, Georgios, in an ill way.
Oh, that's too bad. Fun. I think I consciously made a decision to not pack every day full of interviews, to just soak up more of the atmosphere, actually get something played. And I think that was a good decision for me because I now feel I have a better feel of what's happening, what's going on, what the people like, and just generally what makes Essen fun. I feel like I'm more tuned in now this year than I was last year. I still want to run down the list just really quickly.
Okay.
Okanagan by Gamdow Games. A bit of a disappointment. It's like a simplified, needlessly complicated version of Carcassonne, and it's not better than Carcassonne, unfortunately. Meeple Circus, great last turn, dull first 2 turns. I don't quite understand the hype for it, other than assuming that because the last turn is actually really, really fun, people go out of this game not really remembering the first 2 turns.
But certain media people have really made a thing about this game, right?
Yeah,
and
I know.
And I mean, that's the nature of hype, right?
I guess. I mean, I'm not doubting that they genuinely enjoyed the game.
Oh, no.
I just don't see much. Like I said, the last turn is amazing. It's great fun because you actually have to do things that are entertaining and amusing, other than just a little bit of dexterity. But other than that, I don't know. Then I played Mountains of Madness, which really surprised me.
Was it good?
It was really good. I picked up a copy because there was a few left. It's a really good game. It is far smarter than the party atmosphere style Madness cards suggest.
Does it have legs, though?
Yes.
You think it's...
It does have legs for two reasons. One, you don't actually see all the cards when you play the game. And the second of all, some of the cards are just silly party game style impediments, like you have to touch someone when you talk to them. But there are also cards in there that are legitimate challenges to the way you play a co-op game. Like you can't say the kind of number you want to play, so you have to find a way around it. So you have actual challenges that happen during the game that you need to sort of maneuver around, as you would in any other co-op game. But in here, they're more variable, and sometimes it's really just a little bit of silliness. And that, I think, and that's the one thing that I'm most surprised about. I think that Mountains of Madness found a very sly way, or at least attempts in a very sly way, to deal with the alpha gamer problem in a way that no other game I've seen has tried before. Right. And I'll definitely expand on this on the review that's definitely going to come. And played Village of Horror. Quick, small take on the traditional werewolf type of game. It's fun. It's kind of neat because you can sort of force people to shift alliances, and they can force you to do the same. I'm not sure it has legs, but it's neat. I played Mini Park, which, again, if you have never heard of Carcassonne, it's amazing. If you do have Carcassonne, it's like small and cute. And if you don't like Carcassonne, you probably won't like Mini Park either. I've looked at Mystery of the Temples, and I'm not sure there's much to it, but I might be wrong. And I looked at Photo Finish, which seemed interesting, but seems to just be a real-time competitive puzzle game, which I think is fair, but I'm not sure it works all that well. I played New York Slice.
By friend of the show, Jeffrey D. Allers.
Oh, then forget what I said. I did not play New York Slice, and I did not have a bad time with it.
I played it a year ago, and I thought it was fine.
I think that's fair. I played Gold Fever by the other friend of the show, Daniel Peterson.
Yeah.
Which has a bit of an issue in that it can run too long because of the way you're shifting around stones. Could be better. I played Nations, the dice game, finally, which is really a bit of a waste of time. It's not bad, it's just utterly unnecessary. And I played, finally, like I said, Palace of Mad King Ludwig. And yeah, it's fiddly, it's no fun, it's annoying. And that's how we come full circle.
Yeah. So, I mean, to run down my Essen, it's been...
horrific.
Yeah, well, not horrific, just disappointing in that I've just been sick the whole time. And so, although I met some lovely people, Friday night was great.
Right.
The meetup we had, a few people turned up and it was nice to have a chat.
Yeah.
But all the time I was fighting the fact that I was going to pass out at any moment.
Right.
And so how would you rate this year's Essen for you?
Quite good, actually. I'm sorry to say that I've had a great time, that I love running into people who listen to us. I enjoyed talking to publishers, talking to designers, meeting old faces, meeting new faces, seeing those games. I think whereas last year Hall 7 and 8 were a bit, let's say, wonky, the small publishers seemed, you might have mentioned that phrase, and it was a bit mean, and I think, or cruel even, but there's a certain sense, a bit of truth to it. There's this hall that's like the Hall of Broken Dreams.
Yeah.
I still think it's very cruel to say that. I don't think it's entirely wrong. There are a lot of tiny publishers that go up with their prototypes, with their half-finished games, and unfortunately, the quality of the games in all the other halls, I'm not even talking about the fully published Asmodee big publishers, even like the smaller publishers, like mid-sized publishers that you see in Hall 7, where we are right now, are so good, are so clever, are so unusual and so much fun that, it's quite a hurdle. I think 2 years ago...
It strikes me that a lot of these little guys in the Hall of Broken Dreams simply don't have a proper handle on where the hobby is now.
Yeah.
And what they need to do is a bit more work and a bit more research. And a lot of them strike me as not really gamers. They just have this idea and they go, that's good. And then they come into a place like this and they're like, my God, this is where it's at?
Yeah,
and it just goes to show, if you're going to get involved in anything, know the arena in which you're entering,
I think we were talking a few episodes ago about the professionalism of the industry, and I feel
And we were mostly talking about the business side of things. But I think content-wise, you can definitely see these are some professional game designers here. There's some professional publishers, or at least people who are skilled enough to be professional about the things they do. They do make proper games that work, that don't fall apart the second time you play them.
Yeah.
They're well produced, they look nice, they look appealing, and most of them have a decent price point. I feel like this is really sort of raising the bar of what board games are right now. We can really see like this is an industry that has reached a level where it is open to everyone, and the only thing that's sort of keeping people away is the reputation of board games, and maybe a few inclusivity issues, but both of which can be dealt with.
I mean, it seems to me, I've said this to other people, that it feels like a transitional age to me in gaming.
Definitely.
From that sort of hobby in your shed sort of homebrew idea, really transitioning over. So you still have really good games being made by people in their sheds, but it really feels like it's transitioning over because production is so easy. Kickstarter facilitates people to get funds to leverage that production, that I think in a few years the real hobbyists will be very much in the minority, and there'll always be indie boutique places.
I think they'll be in the minority because most of them will actually end up doing this professionally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think I am a fan of professionalization, and I think fundamentally that's a good thing.
I think I agree. I think this Essen just shows this is it's inviting, it's fun, there's something there that doesn't seem like it will just burst the minute the hype sort of fades away.
So I can't give an answer to this next question.
Right.
But on your initial impressions from this year's Essen, and I'll answer this at a later date.
Right.
What's the one game people should check out?
Ooh, that's difficult. That is difficult. I think. I'm not sure, to be honest. I think I was very much surprised by Mountains of Madness, and quite a bit by Kitchen Rush. I think of the two, the one that's more likely to be overlooked, even though it has a lot of coverage, is probably Mountains of Madness, because it does seem silly and pointless and not particularly thematic, and I'm willing to agree to the lack of theme, but it is a good, solid game that has a lot of legs and legs, and maybe that one. I think from the smaller ones, all of them are good, very, very decent, but none of the small ones have blown me away so far.
All right, well, Georgios, I'm going to get back on the train and I'm going to nestle myself into the warm, welcoming arms of Janine, and I'm going to snot all over her neck as I cry in my illness.
Right, I have a gig. I mean, I have a meeting. I have nothing with Steve and Danny right now, which we're not going to do over there.
Because I was told, someone came to me earlier and said some band are playing in one of the halls later. Do you want to come and see him?
I'm not into music, really.
No?
No, it's work, you know.
Because they said they have a Greek theme, and I thought you'd probably be really into that.
No, it's a geek theme. It's probably just Mr.
Ah, right, probably singing songs about meeples or something.
Yeah, that'll be it.
All right, well, say goodnight, Georgios.
I have to run. Right, I'm sitting here at in Hall 1 at the booth of Cranio Creations with Eliza at A118. Very well. Now, and just to get a general idea of what publishers experience in Essen, what have your days been like leading up to Essen and now the first day of Essen?
It's a very exciting fair. Every year is much more because you have a very stressful period to prepare the fair, and then you go ahead in those days that are really very exciting because you have the opportunity to meet the people that try your game and give you immediate impression, have fun. In this case, Tale of Pirates is a very funny and fast game, so it's very important and appealing for us this kind of experience.
Now, I was walking around yesterday before the whole open property during the press day, and I noticed most of the people start building their booths early or in the afternoon.
and a lot of publishers are sweating because their games might be held up in customs somewhere. We've heard some very, very interesting stories about other publishers. How was your preparation? How was Wednesday to you?
Oh, I arrived here on Tuesday.
All right.
Okay, to check everything was okay. We received a container of games, and so we needed to check that everything is okay. So I think the worst day was Tuesday.
Okay.
Wednesday is just to finish everything, but
it wasn't quite as stressful as today, as people burst in through the doors and just waves of gamers are coming in and they want to play everything at once. So I mean it's 1 p.m. right now. It's fairly early on in the fair. How are your energy levels? Are you excited? Are you still full of energy, or can you already tell this is going to be a stressful 4 days?
I'm absolutely excited about the fair, and I'm recharging from the setup. Okay, this is the part of the fair much more funny.
Oh, okay.
The setup is a little bit stressful for me.
Right.
I'm in charge of the setup, so now I'm having fun.
So interacting with gamers is actually the fun part to you.
Yes, it's also because you can you met people from all around the world, so you have a different perspective also of the board game world. I just met a person from Greece, then someone from Australia, so it's very interesting. It's a unique event to Spiel to receive this kind of energy mood about board game all over the world.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope you're going to have some very, very great days here at Cranio, Hall 1, A118, right next to the entrance. I think it's going to be a great time for you guys.
It's a good place, but also a little bit adventurous, because this year we have to close a part of the stand because last years we had people running.
Oh yeah, okay.
I see. We try to keep this place
safe. I can see. Hey, thanks a lot.
Thanks to you. Bye.
I'm standing in the beautifully apportioned corridor of the Spielmesse in Essen, overlooking modern glass and steel architecture, and being confronted by the shyly inquisitive face of board game celebrity fame man Isaac Childres. Hello.
Welcome. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you for letting me into your building.
So this, by the way, I don't know if you're aware of this, this is the Kind Fortress.
Yeah, that's right, and it's wonderful.
Well, as long as you're on the inside, we're very mean to outsiders.
Yeah, the thing that I found about the Kind Fortress is that the security measures are quite brutal. Those sort of running man, neck exploding things. Very scary.
Yeah, new models. Yeah, absolutely. New models, fresh for 2017.
So I want to talk to you about just a sort of general question first. How does Essen differ from cons that you're used to, the American variety?
Well, it's certainly quite different from some of the smaller regional conventions, and it's probably not even worth the comparison. But thinking about Gen Con is probably the most recognizable reference point. So Essen, first off, is more focused than Gen Con. Gen Con has CCGs and role-playing games and a much broader community of geeks. And you see it in the cosplay. There's a lot of costume at Gen Con and so forth, and you don't have that here at Essen. Essen is really focused on board games and non-collectible card games, so there's just a lot more volume in a more constrained sort of genre space, which means that around every corner is something that you're likely to be very interested in if you're in this hobby.
I mean, does it make you feel that there's simply more in terms of production, in terms of companies, more happening in Europe than America regards board games still?
I think that's true, and I haven't counted, releases and so forth, and I can't give you real numbers on this, but what I can say is that the level of quality and production of the booths themselves and the marketing surrounding them is much more similar to an industry trade show of a much larger industry in America. Right. The walled booths with the private offices for meetings, the size of the banners and the overheads and the aerials and all that. Gen Con looks like a county fair compared to this.
And so, how has it been as a designer, pitching staff, and do you find people have time for you here? And is there a difference in intensity or professionalism in Europe?
Well, I feel a little uncertain to talk about professionalism of publishers as a designer. I don't want to bite any hands that may or may not feed me. But I think that in general, designers will complain pretty loudly about publishers who don't get back to them, failures of communication and so forth. And I don't think that that's any different in the US versus Europe.
Yeah.
I think the reality is that designers, despite the fact that we create, the games or the core of what becomes the product, there's so many of us, and publishers have so many other concerns that are much more bound to time that we end up on the bottom of the priority heap when it comes to that communication. I haven't struggled to meet publishers here, but I've also arranged meetings in advance, and starting as far back as 2 months ago, started to line up some of those meetings. And I think that having the benefit of having a couple of published titles makes it easier to get those meetings, even with publishers who I don't necessarily know yet. That's really been quite a nice turnout that I've been able to come here and meet with new European publishers who don't necessarily come to the US. So that's been great.
So, do you feel... I found it what really surprised me when I first became a professional actor is how unimportant the actors are.
Right.
Especially when you're doing something like film or something like this, but, really, in terms of the hierarchy, you're far down the list, and there was a genuine shock. Is that the same in game design?
I think it is. Designers are, I don't want to say we're a dime a dozen, and there's certainly a lot of very, very capable designers in the industry who have proven themselves on a repeated basis. But it's very much an amateur-driven industry in the sense that very few people can make a living as a designer, and since that's the case, there's a lot of people who are hobbyists and who maybe get the bug and say, oh, let me try and get this published. There's some nut jobs out there. There are people who, have their crazy monopoly variant and they're going to try and sell it to every publisher. And publishers learn to put up certain walls and barriers so that they don't waste time with some of that. And there's not a mentoring process. There's not a process of educating that or an apprenticeship. So if you're a designer and you want to sell a game, what do? Who knows? There's not a method that has been promulgated that you can sort of latch onto and say, this is how you do it, and these are the forms and the norms. You sort of have to learn it by doing it, and sometimes making very foolish errors. And the norms change. So when I first started in 2013, it was not appropriate to pitch a game to multiple publishers, right? You gave one publisher an exclusive. Today, that is entirely not the norm. Right. So if you don't know, and if you're not connected, and you don't go to all the shows, and you're doing this in, from a more marginal place, you aren't going to necessarily make all the right moves. You're going to make some mistakes.
And so just finally to wrap up, a quite banal question, but would you recommend Essen to all those people who haven't been before, and why, if you would?
I think Essen is a really interesting show where you'll see lots of stuff that you haven't seen if you're an American coming over. But I don't recommend it broadly as a trip that everyone should do at least once in their lives. A lot of people say, oh, it's a bucket list kind of thing. I think that you're going to continue to see more growth in U.S. shows, and more publishers are coming over and more games are coming over. I don't think you need to chase the experience. I think that if you are or have pretensions to be in the industry, Essen is a good show to go to. And it really survives more, to my mind, as an option for someone in the U.S. if they want to be industry.
Nice. Well, Isaac, thank you very much.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So I'm standing here at the Galleria at Spiel. It's, I believe it's Friday. I'm not sure. I'm very tired. It's quieter here, so I found two gamers from Germany. Well, I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hey, my name is Ilka from Chemnitz.
And I'm Robert from Chemnitz too.
Both from Germany, Chemnitz, which is in the Saxon... East Saxony, exactly. And I understand this is your first time at Spiel.
So first time in Essen, that's right. We have been yesterday here and it's our second day.
Excellent. So what are your impressions?
It's really crowded, really many games, many publishers, and you can try everything what's new, and it's overwhelming. Really overwhelming how much and how big.
So, do you think that it feels international, and how do you feel? Well, does it feel international?
Of course, you got to a table. We are only 2, so most of our 5, and then you get 2 players that speak French, and the next one speaks English only or something else, and you get instructors that have 4 languages on their
badge. Yeah.
On their badge, so you know they can 4 languages to explain one game.
Most of the games we play in English.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So do you play English as well?
Yes.
We have a lot of English games at home. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So, are there any? Were there any surprises you've seen so far? Any games that you went, oh, I did not know this was here, and this is great?
Most of the games we played, we never heard before.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
So you didn't do any great preparation beforehand?
Oh, no.
You just came here and you let yourself overwhelm.
I read some newsletter. What's here? What's the game of the year, of course.
Right.
There's some really important games that are new here, but there are so many games you cannot read everything. It's not possible.
Obviously. All right. So, what are your plans for the rest of the day? For tomorrow, maybe? What are you going to do?
We'll test some other games, I guess, and maybe buy some games.
All right.
And we will only be yesterday and today here, and we'll drive back tomorrow because we take the not weekend days.
Yeah, that's a good plan. So that is a very good plan.
I really think it will be really overcrowded on weekend.
Very much so. I'm kind of scared of it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. We just actually, a quick aside, we just finished playing Mountains of Madness. What did you think?
It's a nice game. It's really funny to play with friends, and maybe we'll buy it.
Yeah, with friends in a light atmosphere and playing an evening. It would be really nice.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much.
No problem. Have fun.
So I'm in the glorious halls of Essen, overlooking some rather sinister puppets in one direction. And I'm here with the erstwhile crafty players and are now the jingoistic Celtic cardboard, I believe.
That's actually 2 separate entities.
Same people, though?
No, so Crafty Players is myself and Emmet, and it's kind of just a company it was originally a blog and podcast. We're kind of transitioning it to something that allows Emmet to publish his RPG adventures and for me to maybe eventually publish games. Whereas Crafty Cardboard it's a separate group of people, and then we're trying to grow something like the Taiwan board game design guys to help promote Irish designers overseas and stuff. Hopefully look out for us at UK Games Expo next year.
Brilliant. So tell us, what do you think of your first Essen?
Tiring, lots of drinking, lots of board games. But no, it's been amazing. Like even just coming in yesterday at 10 o'clock, getting off the train, absolutely just rammed with people. And just, I was saying to Paddy this morning, it's sad for me that there's so many board games out here that I'll never get to play, because there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And it's just seeing them there and not be... Well, I mean, I could try and buy them all, but not being able to buy them all and play them all makes me a little bit sad.
And how has it fitted with your expectations of what you thought it was going to be when you came?
Oh, God. I think one thing I've noticed, I didn't really know what to expect. I talked to people before who had been, but, I mean, being on the ground and listening to other people talk about it is completely different, obviously. There's a lot more families here than I expected, and I think it just goes to demonstrate like the difference in board game attitude, say in Ireland and England, where it's kind of viewed as a nerdy middle-aged man's thing, whereas here you see so many families walking around and playing games, and I think that's probably what surprised me most so far.
Because I was talking to my partner and I was saying like she'd love it. So, and in a few years, like we have a little boy, he's like 1.5, but in a few years, like definitely bring like my whole family over and do the family thing. So many different play areas for kids, things like that. It's just having families around is just, it's really heartening. Because in Ireland you'd never get something like this. No. Like you're in the back rooms and dingy pubs and stuff like that when you're wanting to play.
And so does it feel like an industry here as opposed to a load of hobbyists just getting together and pumping out something?
I think at the moment we're in Hall 3, right? And we have Ultra Pro there, and we walk past Game Workshop, and we have like Spiel Offensive here. these are some of the larger-ish companies. Go over to stage Hall 1, is it, where you have Asmodee everywhere. That feels like industry. That feels like professionalism. You go back to Hall 7, 8, 9, apparently, and that's where you have the small indie guys. So it doesn't feel like industry the whole way through, but there's definitely pockets of it here and there where you feel the professionalization of the hobby and the
Cardamundi stand looks really obviously super professional, and there's always monitors and it's all white and crisp and clean. There's lots of guys in suits around, but we always came in through Hall 3. I don't know how that happened, which is it's somewhere between the two, which is just it's a bit more comfortable, I suppose.
And I think as well, you see the publishers here as well. You see Panda, you see Cardamundi, you see lost names, but and seeing them here, you recognize that there is still that kind of hobby aspect of it, where people can go up and be like, oh, hey, I might make a game, and you can get advice from the publishers.
I mean, I think gaming's in a wonderful place at the moment where it really is that transition between still being very much a hobby thing. There's still a free interchange of ideas between different companies, but also getting to that thing where it feels professional, it feels cool, and it feels interesting. And it's my hope that it stays this way and doesn't transcend into becoming this horrible corporate entity where, ideas are copyrighted and there's lawsuits, and things like that. And this still feels collegiate to me.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, we sat down yesterday, played a few demos with guys, and they were German, we're Irish, but the friendliness was there. Everybody was super friendly. There's nobody on edge, nobody kind of protecting their game from prying eyes. You're right. Everything is just so open, so shared, so friendly.
To see compared to UK Games Expo. I know UK Games Expo is a lot more. Obviously, it's a lot of video games and things like that. But what the vibe is like over there? Because I'm wondering, you'd obviously know how many of the big European publishers, American publishers, you get at UK Games Expo. Is it the same kind of vibe?
Well, I was there a couple of years ago, and it was almost none.
Okay.
And I think it's grown a bit, but it's still not. Essen is the worldwide hub for this, you know what I mean? So everybody comes. A couple of years ago, not so many American publishers. Fantasy Flight weren't here, for instance, a couple of years ago. But now it's absolutely necessary for them and for this to be here. So it's really interesting.
The spectrum of people you have here is incredible. Like, there's guys selling leather armor, and it's just such a broad range of things you can get, comic books, and there's cosplay stuff, and there's obviously dice. There's a little bit more of the tabletop, like D&D, and obviously the German board games here. So it's not just board games. Obviously, it's Spiel, so it's play. But no, it's been great, and I'll definitely be back next year, 100%.
Might need new legs before then.
Yeah. But it's such a shame you're leaving so early, because you're missing out on all of the boozing.
We had enough of that last night, I think.
We got our weekend's worth of boozing in one night, basically.
Oh my god.
All right, well, gentlemen, thank you very much for giving over your time.
Thank you.
See you next year.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No worries. So I'm here in Hall 7 with Joris from legendary publisher Splotter Spellen. Was that a good pronunciation?
Yeah, Splotter Spellen. You make it a little bit more German. We're Dutch from the Netherlands, so we're Splotter.
I don't want to make
No
it
worries.
German. I know how the Dutch feel about the Germans. So first thing I want to ask you is, how have you felt about this year's Spiel? Has it been different to other Spiels, or has it been anything unique?
Well, as a fair as a whole, it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So for us, it's the 20th time that we're here. So when we first came here, you just had, I think it was 2 halls, and you could go everywhere and know everyone. And these days, it's so big that it's hard to know even the people who are in your own direct neighborhood. It's hard to say if it's something completely different or it's just. Every time it's bigger, and there's new things, and there's new things, and there's new things.
And have you had a chance to check out any games yourself, or has it all been work?
I played, during fair times, I played 2 games with a friend of mine as a designer from Indonesia, so I wanted to play some of his games, actually a game and a prototype. And in the evening we play games, but most of the time during the day I'm in the stand, and I'm I'm talking. If you're here for 20 years, you basically know loads and loads of people. So people just come by and say hello, and you see people once a year or 2 times a year, and it's nice.
So you said it's 20 years. Is it 20 years since the formation of the company, or 20 years since you've been in Essen, or both?
It's the 21st time that we are in Essen as a company. We were founded actually with the idea to go to Essen.
Mm-hmm.
So we were a bunch of people who were members of a student society. We made games in the student society. And then my girlfriend at the time found out that you could rent a booth in Essen, and a small booth in Essen at the time certainly, but still is quite cheap. So Essen has a setup where the big companies pay more per square meter than the small companies. So as a small company, you can rent a small booth and be here and show what you have. And we found out that it was quite affordable to do so. So we got together with 2 other people who had come up with some games, and that's how we started our. That's the very first thing we did as a company, was rent a booth in Essen. And then we went, oh dear, we have to have games to sell. Because we had games that we made, that we had designed, but we had not produced them.
Yeah. And so, was that first game Roads and Boats?
No, we did have Roads and Boats with us at the time. There was a big wooden version of Roads and Boats, which I made together with my girlfriend at the time. So Roads and Boats was designed by Jeroen and me, but my girlfriend really liked it, and she could do all this crafting type of stuff. So we went and made a version completely out of wood in a wooden box with little clay figures, etc. But we thought at the time that you could not possibly sell big games like that. And by the way, we had no way of making one. So we founded Splotter to make simple, accessible, cheap games that could be played by everyone. So we came with 3 games which we put in video boxes because it's we didn't have. Making a box is very expensive, and you need volume to make a box. And so we made video boxes because we could print the cover and put it in a video box, and that made it very cheap if you make only 25 copies, which was what we did at the time. So we tried to present those video boxes at the first time in Essen, and they were bought. People bought them, and we had some people who really enjoyed the games in the video boxes and negotiated them down because they thought the price of 20 Deutschmark was way too much for. But we sold them that. But there was this big wooden thing on the shelves because we took Roads and Boats, the wooden Roads and Boats, just to show off. And everyone kept asking, we like the video boxes, but what's that big wooden thing over there? So we thought, okay, there might be some interest in this. And so the next year we had more games in video boxes, but we also made a version of Roads and Boats which we handmade. So we bought a big cutting machine, and we cut every single. If you know Roads and Boats, there's like a gazillion components in there. Yeah. So we cut every single thing ourselves. We clay figured some of the items. We got some wooden pieces and stickers to put on the wooden pieces. And we made, I think, 20 copies of that because it was so much work. I think it took about 6 hours or 8 hours to produce one single game. And they were all sold on the Wednesday before the fair starts. Because there was a big run to have this particular game. So that's how that game started its history.
And so are you surprised not only with the success of Splotter, but the reputation of Splotter over the last 20 years? Because you're the kind of the ultimate sort of connoisseurs game companies who are last year.
Yeah, we do something which is... So we do it as a hobby, so we don't need to live off this. And it means that we can take our time to make a game. So we can take 2 years or 3 years. If we don't like something, we can throw it out. If you're not dependent on what you make, you have a lot of freedom. So that's something that's I think important. And then I guess we make a type of games that most people don't make.
Right.
And it's if you make this type of game, you have to spend really a lot of time on it. Although some other people, of course, also do spend quite a lot of time. But it's always a bit it has always felt risky. So we always made games where people told us, because when we made Roads and Boats, when we had finished it, we went to lots of publishers and said, would you like to publish this? Because, we had a great response. And every single publisher told us that there's no market for this type of games. You cannot publish it. It's impossible. So that's why we did it ourselves. So I guess, if you do something different from everyone else for 20 years, that's how you kind of build such a reputation.
And how have you changed as designers over the last 20 years? Or have you changed as designers?
So the very first games that were in video boxes, they were made by members of the student society, and so they had different designers every time. One of the video box games was made by Jeroen and me, and very quickly, and Roads and Boats, of course, was made by Jeroen and me, and I think after the second year, Jeroen and me were always the two people making the games. So basically, because we felt it was really interesting, whereas most of the people who were in the student society, they were kind of tagged on when we would organize a game design night, and then everyone who was there could be on the table, and if you were on the table during the first ideas, we counted you as an author. But after a while, it was more like Jeroen and me were always busy designing, and the other people would not be that interested, so then it became something of the two of us. We changed. We also have the same graphic designer for almost all of the games, so it's a guy called Inze, who is absolutely not into games.
Okay.
He has been in Essen for 1 hour, I think, in the past 20 years. He did not. In the very beginning, my girlfriend did the drawings, and she made the drawings for Roads and Boats, for instance. And she did that together with Herman, we had 4 guys. We had 4 people. My then girlfriend Tamaha, and Herman, and Jeroen and me in Splotter in the beginning. Herman would do the layout of the rules, and Tamaha would do all the drawings, and we'd work on the games together. But Herman at some point decided that it was so much about games, all this, and people would write to him about games, talk to him about games, be interested in Splotter, and he said, I want to do other things with my life as well. So he left, and when Tamaha and I broke up, Tamaha also left. But already before that, we had decided to go for professional graphic design, and we have Inze, who does all the design. And the fun thing about it is, because he's not a gamer, he's not influenced by how games look. So he designs the games based on what he calls the design language. So he thinks about, for instance, if you have a game like Food Chain, he goes and he says, okay, I want to... it's his idea that it's in the 50s. We just came up with this idea of it's a food, you sell hamburgers and stuff. And so he goes away and he comes back and he says, I think a 50s theme is nice. So he comes with a big board with all kinds of stuff from the 50s, and do you like this? Does it work? And we love it. And then he is quite extreme at following that idea through, which leads to games that are, well, like in Food Chain, it is extremely downplayed and simple in its graphics. It looks like a 50s game. For instance, in Antiquity, his idea was that it was a box full of old stuff that was kind of found. So he made the board, and then he actually threw coffee over it, and he did all this kind of stuff to make a completely old-looking thing. And we have had people who sent back Antiquity games saying, there are so many stains in this, can I have one without stains, please?
Crazy.
It's always funny. So, and for Indonesia, for instance, he really went deep into it, all the Indonesian patterns and drawings, and it makes that our games look different. So.
And so finally, what next for Splotter?
Well, I hope so. We had, of course, a wonderful success with Food Chain starting 2 years ago. Now we are going to make the 7th reprint in January.
Is this your most successful game?
It is the best-selling game that we've made. Yeah. It is. It's been amazing how many people have. We've always been popular with a certain with as you said, connoisseurs, people who really know Splotter. But this one has broken through to a much larger group of people, and it turns out that because we always felt that most. So if people tell me they want to play a game, I almost never propose to play my own games, because most people who like games, they might not like this type of very heavy games that we make. And sometimes people even go, "Oh, you make games? Can we play one of yours?" And I say, "No, you will probably not really enjoy it." So we were very surprised that there are so many people who really love, with a passion, love Food Chain. So anyway, we will make another version of that. We are working on something new, but it always takes us quite some time. And it's been taking it's 2 years since Food Chain. We hope we have something next year. Normally we have something. We have never taken more than 3 years for a game, but maybe it will take 4 years this time. I don't know yet.
Well, brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. And I look forward to hopefully playing the new game next year.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
So, I've been allowed into the inner sanctum, the luxurious Dice Tower booth. And I'm here with Suzanne Sheldon, who is the app correspondent, the Kickstarter correspondent, and lately the host of the Dice Tower podcast. So firstly, thank you very much for giving over your time.
I'm so excited that you could make time for me as well. This is great. Thank you.
Yeah, so firstly, just a general question. This is your first Essen, right?
It is indeed.
And how has it been? Not just the fair itself, but Germany, the whole experience. What's been good, what's been bad, what's been frustrating, what's been annoying, those sorts of things.
Unfortunately, my biggest regret leaving Essen will be that I didn't get to explore Germany more. It's my first time in Germany, and just the little hints that I've gotten of it, as we've done very short, sojourns out, I really wish I could stay more and explore more. But I've really enjoyed the carbohydrates here.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the pretzels and all that. It's those are my favorite things to eat. So I've really enjoyed the food. The weather is quite like my home in Seattle, Washington, so I feel very comfortable and at home here. And honestly, the people are so gracious. Whatever, joking stereotypes or something that you may hear from in America about German austerity or things like that, just everybody I've run into has been so polite and kind. From any shopkeepers or whatever. When it's very clear I don't speak German. They're so helpful and patient with me. And I'm embarrassed because everybody here is bilingual, trilingual, whatever, and there I am just, with my poor, sprechende English, and then praying that they can accommodate me. And Essen itself, the fair itself, is unlike anything I've ever seen.
How does it compare to the big American shows?
Well, I think the only thing you can compare this to is Gen Con, and I've never attended Gen Con, but I was talking to my podcast co-host, Mandy, and she actually has now said that she definitely prefers the Spiel at Essen to Gen Con. There's something about the crowd here. It's a little more upbeat. It's more games focused, more analog games focused, which is something obviously we both really care about. There is a vibe here that is just... There's a lot of families, and there's just a lot of smiles and a lot of enthusiasm. Not a lot of cynicism, and just in the air, if that makes any sense.
I mean, board games are less niche in Germany. So
yes.
I mean, I've never been to an American show, but I went to the UK Games Expo, which is a similar sort of vibe, and that's very much gamers. Whatever that broad term means. There's not so many normals there.
Yeah.
Whereas you feel there's a lot here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the one big difference I would note is that there's not a lot of open play space. There are tables at every booth. The booths are quite large, and if there's any game you want to demo from any publisher here, you can find a table and play it, and that's wonderful. But at a lot of American conventions, there's always some large space with a lot of tables that are just open gaming, and there's none of that here. So that is one of the biggest differences. And personally, it would be nice if there was a table for open gaming here, but in the bigger picture, it's not a big deal considering all the other benefits that Essen has.
And what have you managed to play in the evenings? Have you managed to get gaming in at the hotel, or have you just been too wiped out?
Honestly, been almost too wiped out. I've played a total of 6 games in 5 days here.
You're doing much better than me.
Yeah. It's tough to get time. by the time we close down the booth at 7 and grab a bite to eat, it's quite late, you're tired, etc. So I have gotten to play a few quick, light, new ones that I'm, really excited about. I think Essen is great this year from a games being released point of view. But yeah, unfortunately, game playing has not been the priority.
And so, how have you found the people with regards to... Because I walk by here every so often when I'm looking at other booths, and then you and Mandy always seem to be posing for photos and that sort of thing. Is it a little strange, overwhelming that people treat you like a quasi-celebrity?
I think at the Dice Tower booth, obviously if people are coming to the Dice Tower booth, they're aware of our content, and so it's not odd that, they might recognize us or whatever, and it's quite nice. It's humbling. It's a little bit embarrassing. I think that we're just like everybody else. We just happen to do this one odd piece in the hobby. But it's extraordinarily flattering, and everyone is just incredibly friendly and open, and we've been recognized as we walk through randomly, but you have to keep in mind there's tens of thousands of people here, and we've been recognized a handful of times.
Yeah.
So it's good for if our egos were getting too inflated, it's also good to set perspective as well.
And how has your feelings about the hobby changed since you've been a media creator? Since you've essentially, it's not a job, but you have to have a more critical eye. It's not just about enjoying games, it's about appraising games.
Sure. I think the biggest change for me personally is I just have a much, much deeper understanding of the industry and how the industry works. So when I first started looking at board games, it was very much just from a gamer's perspective. Do I like the game? Do I like the pictures? And that kind of thing. Now, when I look at games, I understand much more of how it got to be where it is, from the design and development process to the art and graphic design, the printing, the production, the challenges there, the shipping, all of the distribution. I have a much, much greater understanding of how these things are made, which in many ways it doesn't change my opinion of the game, but there are factors that may frustrate some people who are a little more casual that I may have a slightly different perspective on, because I understand, why does this cost so much? Because every card has unique art.
Right.
And ultimately that cost has to go into the game. So while, it may just be a deck of cards and a few bits, the art investment was huge to provide that beautiful game, and I understand that. So I'm a little maybe less upset about that than somebody who might not understand that.
So moving on to something, I guess, a little less positive. So you're very outspoken I guess you're one of the most forefront women in the hobby right now, I would say, and you're very outspoken when you receive what you consider to be gender-focused criticism, and I don't think there's any doubt that women get a harder time online when they put themselves forward than men
Sure.
do. I've been doing a podcast now for 2 years, and we have a sort of, reasonable following, and the things I'm criticised for certainly aren't the things that you would be criticised for.
Okay.
I'm never criticised for giggling, and I'm never criticised for sort of something that is specifically gendered. I might be criticised for being stupid, but it's not a gender criticism. Do you think this is a purely online phenomenon? Do you find that you confront this sort of stuff in real life when you're face-to-face with people, or do you think the anonymity of the online world allows people to be nastier than they would normally?
I think that the anonymity online does allow people to be in words, in print, say things that they may not say directly to your face. But I do ultimately think it's just a reflection of the reality of our day-to-day, and whether somebody somehow, the anonymity, releases their inhibitions and they feel freer to say the things directly, it doesn't change the way they feel, whether they are saying them or not. And I believe that your biases, your beliefs, your loves and your hates that you internalize impact your interactions and the way that you react to the world outside in overt and subtle ways. And, so while somebody may not say, you're the world's biggest piece of shit feminist, excuse my language, which was told to me just recently, there will be people and they're just glaring at you, and you don't know if that's just their face, or if they're glaring at you for a reason, or whatever, and maybe it's nothing, but we have already had incidents here. Again, Mandy was groped. Somebody unfortunately touched her inappropriately, and when she confronted him about it, they said, "Oh, it was an accident. I'm sorry," but it was clearly not. And you do get challenged. I speak pretty forthrightly about the changes I would like to see in the hobby and the industry as far as gender and ethnicity and representation.
Which would be what? Very, very briefly.
Yeah. I think that the industry has grown out of just a very homogenous root, and the reality today is that gamers come in all shapes, sizes, colors, genders, everything, and that gaming does not reflect that. Similarly, you can watch the TV show Friends. One of the most popular TV shows in the world, for near a decade, right? Reflected in New York that just doesn't exist.
Right.
A very homogenous New York that never existed, right? A very, and I would like games to reflect the reality in a different way and be more welcoming and more open and more representative. I'm not looking at, something, does every game have to have a handicapped person and a Chinese person and a black person? I'm like, no, that's not the point. We're looking for individual contributions that grow to a bigger picture. And that's what I'd like to see. And it starts from the ground up. It starts at the local game store and how you make that environment welcoming and safe to people, whether they're, no matter what their color or gender, etc. It means when somebody tells an off-color joke that makes somebody uncomfortable, that you're willing to say, that's not something that we have here, It means that publishers need to be careful about the themes that they're picking and thoughtful about how they're representing the people within those themes. If you're making a game about indigenous people in North America, are you doing it in a well-researched way? Are you using artists from that population? Are you talking to people from that population and making sure that it's being done in a respectful, thoughtful way? And so that's on them, and same with artists, same with designers, etc. So that's really what it's about. It's little tiny adjustments, maybe a little extra self-reflection when you're putting these things together, and making thoughtful choices in context of this amazing, diverse world of gamers that exists and maybe isn't always reflected in the product itself.
It's really interesting because it seems to me to be a peculiarly American problem, and I say this because I live in Berlin, and Berlin is a sort of oasis of relaxed attitudes towards everything, right? So my local game group is pretty much 50-50 men and women, people from all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of creeds, all kinds of colours, and everyone sort of rubs, and it's, in my experience, it's not been what I've seen. And it's really interesting. Do you think it's an American issue, or do you hear things from other places that makes you think that I'm talking out of my ass?
No, I think it is, without a doubt, representation, experiences, they are highly cultural contextual. Absolutely. And, there are jokes that can be made in Japan by Japanese people that Japanese American people would find hugely offensive because they have a very different life experience and cultural context in that world. And that's something that I think that because games are global now, publishers who want to play in that global market just need to be aware of. It doesn't mean they don't have to follow whatever path they choose, but it is ridiculous for them not to at least to educate themselves about the context that they may be impacting and how it may be received. But yeah, I think that when I'm just walking around Essen, and this is in no way meant to be a criticism, it is a fairly homogenous visual crowd from it is very gender mixed, and you see people who are button-up blouses and flowers, and you see people who are in grungy, like rock band style t-shirts or nerdy shirts. You see that kind of diversity, but just ethnically there is a general kind of similarity. Like, there's very few black people here, which Mandy has kind of noticed, and other than the Asian vendors, there are very few East Asian people that I've seen here. And again, that's not a criticism, but I think it's a reflection of kind of this region, whereas in the United States there is a lot of Mexican immigrants and a lot of immigrants from Southeast Asia and from the Middle East, and you just have more people in the mix, which adds so much more color and flavor and beauty, but it also creates more misunderstandings and conflicts and things that you have to kind of surmount sometimes to understand where the common ground is. So I don't believe it's singularly American, but I do think that there are elements of North America that maybe sometimes exacerbate some of that.
Yeah. And so finally, after saying all of this, are you optimistic for the future of this aspect of gaming? The sort of the all-encompassing allowance to have people, whatever you are, play? Or do you think we're in for rocky roads ahead?
Oh, I'm hugely optimistic, without a doubt, and it comes in many forms. It comes in the form of, while I often get critical or even maybe rude comments online, I also get a lot of support, and I have had people reach out to me saying, this matters, or this is how this has impacted me, or I feel more welcome, or this incident happened and I felt like we addressed it in a positive way, and I get to hear those stories, and I feel like that is a wonderful, wonderful kind of gentle shift in the right direction. Additionally, I know more and more publishers, just thankfully through my work with Dice Tower and just my community outreach, especially newer publishers under 5 years old. These are that they care about these things, that representation, for example, Renegade Games is a great example. Top tier publisher, very, very young, under 5 years old, right? But that team cares about representation. They consider it. Now, they're still going to make, a bunch of different games and not, cater to, political correctness, but they're thoughtful about it. And that makes a difference.
It's not about catering, I don't think, or pandering to anything specifically. It's just about reflecting the world as it exists, right?
Even in a fantastical way, yeah. Even in non-realistic settings, I think that there are energies that people can put into being thoughtful, self-questioning, self-reflective before they produce something to make it as accessible as it can be.
I mean, it always blows my mind when you see these kind of criticisms. You wouldn't have X in this place, and it's a game with dragons and orcs. And it's like, I mean, this isn't history. You can't go to a history book and say, these people weren't here. There's bloody dragons in it.
Absolutely. And I've even had situations where people are like, well, in historical accuracy is often in gaming, because so many games are set in kind of Renaissance era, etc. Historical accuracy is often listed, but unfortunately, that history ignores the reality. I released a bunch of research. I didn't do this research, but I helped collect a little bit of research about Africans in Renaissance Italy.
Right.
That existed in many, many roles, from diplomats to slaves to workers to artists, etc. So it would be actually historically accurate in some of these games to have that representation.
Absolutely. There has been this idea that we were very ethnically separated.
Yeah.
And there was no global society, which is a complete misnomer.
Absolutely.
We've always been a global species, and we've always mixed with each other. And yeah, I'm hopefully optimistic too.
Yes.
That these ructions in the internet are simply people trying on the internet for size, and we'll get used to what we're doing.
Or they're angry about other things in their life, and this is the way they express it. But looking around the games at Essen, I think we're seeing really great new stuff come out. A lot of great publishers, old publishers adjusting, new publishers bringing fresh things to the table, and optimism is a great word for it, and I think we are seeing progress, and it makes me so happy.
Brilliant. Well, on this fantastically optimistic note, Susan, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Right, I'm standing in Hall 1 and I'm hearing some rumblings about Asmodee's big screen live show talkie thingy from some publishers and now from some visitors as well. So I'm here with Tatiana and Marcel. So what are your impressions? How do you feel about Asmodee's live show in Hall 1?
The live show was quite okay, but if you're trying to get a game explained next to it, it's really hard to keep track on what the guy is saying, because the microphones are really loud, and possible you don't get everything you need to play to
understand
what's going on or what he's trying to explain to you.
Right. So would you say that if you know the live show is going on, you would avoid trying a game in Hall 1 because of it?
Not complete Hall 1, but really near at the station. No, I won't recommend it.
All right. Okay. So did you try any games? So were you trying to get a game explained to you in Hall 1?
Yeah, it was too loud. It was impossible to understand the rules of the game.
All right. So for one final question, do you think Asmodee, since they have such a great booth and can choose what to do with their booth, that it's okay?
Since it's only Hall 1 and Hall 1 are all big publishers, it seems a little bit unfair to the others, but it's quite a really big space they're keeping up, so 50-50.
All right, okay, thank you so much.
So I'm standing at the twilight of this year's Essen Fair, and all of my trains have been cancelled, so I managed to grab hold of Mariano from What's Your Game to have a little chat about Essen this year. So just tell us firstly, how has it been for What's Your Game?
Yeah, well, actually, I can't complain, let's put it this way.
You do, though?
Yeah, I cannot. So basically, yeah, it was good. It was good. Good things. I've seen good things. People talk to me. They present me new prototypes.
Did you see anything that you wanted to sign?
I would like to publish many of those projects. Unfortunately, I have no room in my schedule to make everything. For those of the guys that I will not choose, I wish the best. But of course, I'm limited. So anyway, yeah, quite a good experience. We sold so many copies of the new release for this year, which is Loot Island.
And it's sold out, right?
It's sold out. You may know that the game, probably there is something that actually reflects you.
The problem is when I open the game, I get so horny because of one of the character cards in it.
It's very hot.
That I can't look at it.
Yeah, I remember when I drawn it. I kind of had a kind of little wood. So
I imagine you couldn't control yourself, to be honest.
Yeah. So yeah, quite good experience. Yeah.
And tell us about your experience at Essen. Do you get to do anything other than playtest games and sit at the booth, or do you get to go out and play stuff? Or what?
Yeah, sometimes I take a walk to take a break. There is no chance for me to join a table and play a game. So when I choose to buy a game to bring it home, like every other guest of the fair, I must base on my instinct. I must base myself on what I read before or what I listen to some podcast.
You know it.
Where they give you the perfect information to make the choice.
You should be our advertising guy.
And or maybe friends, because fortunately for me, I have a lot of friends around like you. They give me some tips, so I can buy something and I can go home and complain what I choose.
We can come around yours, we can play it, and then you just complain for an hour after we play it.
What the fuck? I did it again, seriously.
And did you pick up anything today? Over Essen?
Well, I'm quite interesting to play my own copy of Keeper.
Yeah.
Okay. I also bought in a Raptus of Instinct, there was a game about a library that goes on fire. Alexandria.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It inspired me. Maybe it's the artwork, it's the feeling. I don't know anything about the game. I just decide, let's move and take a copy. I'm quite excited to play soon. Maybe with you?
For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, nice. So, yeah, many other copies, but actually the revelation, but this is a game that actually I already played. It's When I Dream.
Oh, well, I played this last year. We got the indie copy last year.
Yeah. So I finally had the chance to put my hand on the copy from Rappers, which is a brand that I respect deeply.
For sure.
And I saw this amazing production of the game, and I must say that actually I think we have probably a candidate for a new Splotter Spellen or something.
You think?
Yeah. There are some qualities in the game that actually scream about. Also, another revelation I took, a revelation, about the game. I was quite impressed by Azul.
I've not played it. I mean, it looks amazing.
It looks amazing, and the gameplay really surprised me a lot. Yeah. By the way, I should not, move too forward, but actually, I think that also Azul has a chance to be nominated at least in the Cranio Spiel des Jahres.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so many good games. It was also the years of the big games, Yeah, there is the one that is impossible to pronounce from Uwe Rosenberg. Maybe you know.
Nussfjord,
yes. Yeah, it's a big game. There is the second season.
Pandemic
Legacy.
Heaven and Ale.
It's the game. It's the year of the big boxes game. So I decided to bring a small copy, a small game. Yeah, and actually this choice awarded because people liked my game and they put a lot of copies. So I'm happy.
So what do you think is going to be the game from Essen this year that people will be talking about in a year's time?
Yeah, actually I don't know quite well, but probably because it happens all the time. There is always a game that looks the star of the show, and then there is another one that for some reason was a little bit on the shadow, and it pops up later. So I can't tell exactly what is going on. So I don't want to do any prediction.
You don't want to put your neck on the line?
No prediction.
All right, well, Mariano, thank you very much for giving over your time.
Oh, thank you.
And your boot space for storing my bags.
Yeah, you're welcome, as usual.
I'll see you again in Berlin if I ever get back to Berlin.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a kind of a journey.
Yeah. It's like the Odyssey.
Yeah. You're like Frodo by now. So
thank you. I look like Frodo.
You look like Frodo, yeah.
So I'm back home. The seismic shocks of being in Essen during Spiel are slowly fading into memory. It's impressive to be surrounded by 182,000 different gamers running around these huge halls, looking for games, playing games, meeting friends, which is what I did as well. I met friends. I met new ones and old ones. I talked to people I only see once a year, which was great. Not because I only see them once a year, but because I see them at all. I met people who I've only interacted with online, knowing only the Twitter handle or maybe a Board Game Geek name. So that was great. We had a meetup, which was quite enjoyable, even though I must note that on average our readers are taller or listeners are taller than I am, which I'm going to take as a personal offense. Getting back was a bit of a struggle, what with a storm sort of cancelling most of our trains. Luckily, I got a fairly easygoing train in the early afternoon on Monday. Booking first class does pay off. I brought back a whole lot of games, games to review, games to play, games to play after we review them. I brought a few gifts for friends and family. I've spent not enough time with people I wanted to spend more time with. So that's always kind of a regret because you're torn between finding new games to play, trying out new games, seeing them, talking to people, and spending time with friends. And unlike last year, where I couldn't wait to go back, I feel like now I sort of I'm still processing all these impressions, all these great conversations I've had, and I am looking forward to going back next year. It should be even more amazing than it was this time, and great games are coming. Basically, that's my succinct moral of being at Spiel. There are great games coming, games that have just now found distribution in other countries or international distribution even. Asmodee continues to be the prick on the block, what with, putting up a huge live show that was so noisy that people couldn't actually demo any games in the vicinity. So that should be interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's been fantastic. If you have the chance, definitely go. If you don't have the chance, somehow find a way. No, you don't have to, but it's a great time. It's a great place to be surrounded by gamers. It's a great place to just soak up all these new ideas and colorful and exciting new games on at the booths, and even some awful bad ones, which we'll talk about soon, I'm sure. And well, that's it basically. My daughter is crying. Apparently she does not like her breakfast today. So that's me signing off, and you'll hear from me and Ben and Nick and possibly TC in the days to come.
Morning. It is the morning after the weekend before, and I sit here facing my microphone with a scratchy throat and a heart full of regrets. Essen for me was something of a snafu because I was sick the entire time, and when I was there I was feeling dreadful, and I took some time out not to go because it would be simply horrendous. But I got back last night after a big storm disrupted the whole country and all the trains were cancelled, so we had to stay in Essen an extra night. And I played a couple of games. And I played Dragon's Castle, and I played The Cousin's War. 2 nice, quick, 2-player games. Both of them delightful, both of them really enjoyable, which reignited my regard for this year's Essen. And as I look across at my group of games that I've bought, I'm excited to play them, and that's what Essen does. It refreshes me. It makes me a gamer again. And I just wanted to say thanks to all of those people that we met up with. Rico, Chris, the crafty players, the guy from Australia with the amazing moustache whose name I can't remember. Come on the guild and tell us now. All of those wonderful people that we met, all of the people who helped us. Veronica and Mariano at Watch Your Game, with their incredible patience and allowing us to drop our bags off there and be a huge pain in the rear end. Dylan and Andrew from Seize the Bean, who refreshed us with coffee every morning and also didn't mind us hanging around and being a pain. And all of those people who gave over their time to speak to us, and I guess, without wanting to sound like a Hollywood sap, you lot for indulging us, listening to us, and hopefully enjoying us. So come over onto the guild, tell us what you thought of our Essen coverage. Go onto the website, there'll be many written reviews coming up, as well as reviewing all the new hotness from Essen. And if you like us and you value us, go on to patreon.com/perfectinformation and maybe pledge to the show, and we can do more things like this and maybe from other different conventions. So now I'm going to spend the rest of the day recovering before normal life resumes. The horror. The